Please go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, all. My name is Akshay. I am Deputy Director General of Foreign Trade, working in DGFT, Ministry of Commerce, Government of India. We welcome and bring to all the participants who have joined in to this webinar series. This is one of the last webinars in the series which has been started under the Niryat Bandhu scheme of DGFT. Okay, so let me share the screen consisting of slides. Okay. Uh, Once again, welcome everybody. Today's topic is upgrading capital goods through EPCG scheme for enhanced exports. This webinar is coming under the Niryat Bandhu scheme of DGFT in coordination with Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, New Delhi. I'd like to briefly go through the contents which I would be covering, starting with the introduction, where I'll be telling about the general trends which are happening under the capital goods sector. What is the world trade scenario in capital goods? How are the capital goods being traded? And then we come to the foreign trade policy of India and specific schemes where we promote exports by way of duty nullification schemes like EPCG schemes. Then we go about uh, um, talking about the benefits of the EPCG scheme, and then we do a bit of recap on all these contents. So while people are still joining, I'll continue. However, I would I would just want to mention that the session is open in terms of posting your questions on the chat, and we even take questions on the email. You can leave it at the IFT's email. You'll be replied with after this session, maybe tomorrow or day after as well. Right. So before getting into the actual the concepts of Kavlin, is the presentation visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Right. So when we talk about a particular firm or an entity which is into the process of manufacturing or into manufacturing as well as exports, we get to divide the cost in terms of where we have to spend the cost for, in terms of the cost on the raw materials, the cost on the capital goods, the cost on the labor, and so on, right? So one important factor of production is the capital goods, basically the machinery and the tools and the accessories which help in manufacturing quality goods. Uh, when we say capital goods, they might be available in and around your firms or entities, or it might be available at a far off distance at different states, or the capital goods will have to be procured from other countries, right? So similarly, the raw materials is also being used along with the capital goods for the manufacture and exports. So the cost of these capital goods or the raw materials when being procured has a bit of indirect taxes in the form of the custom duties, or if it is procured domestically, you would be paying the GST, IGST, and so on, right? So The concept is that when you are using it for the purpose of exports, you need not, you have to be compensated adequately in terms of nullifying that duty. So that is the basic idea which the DGFT and the Ministry of Commerce works towards. Right. So the other aspect from a firm's point of view is that a firm, in order to keep its competitiveness in the domestic market or for the export market for that matter, it will have to maintain its competitiveness by way of having the latest technology, the latest machinery with its production, so that the production is efficient, the production is defect free, and it is of high quality, which is it's a good plus for the exporter. So the products manufactured out of such firms are at a higher demand as observed historically. Right, so this is the perspective from the firm's point of view. However, for the government of India or for the Indian economy point of view, capital goods as an industry, it is very important because it creates, it's a fundamental unit across all sectors, and it creates a strong base for various sectors like the consumer goods, engineering goods, the textile sector, the automobiles, or the construction, and so on. So, having a good capability and capacity for manufacturing capital goods is a very need of the hour, and traditionally India has been increasing its capacity in the capital goods sector. However, there's a lot much to be done in this front. Just to give an example, the capital goods industry itself provides for more than 50 lakh direct employment opportunity in the coming few years, right? So, I mean, the number of indirect employment opportunities would be way too higher. So, it's a very critical industry per se, the sector per se for Indian government point of view. Uh, and because of which the government of India would you'd already be knowing that under our honorable Prime Minister, uh, we have been pushing for Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India programs where we want to excel in the capacity of our goods and capital goods in specific. So capital goods in India has a market size of over 40 billion US dollars, and it is very important engine. I mean, capital goods is a basic engine for our exports. That's what we call, because it catalyzes all other sectors to increase its competitiveness and perform better month on month, year on year, and so on. So the health of the capital goods sector, whether it is improving on year basis, a quarter on quarter basis, gives a indicator of how well the other sectors would do after some point in time, because the demand for the capital goods uh, from any of the end using sector would be basically based on the export orders which basically export orders which the sectors would be wanting to export. Now we can just to just to give a perspective as to the capital goods sector. Domestically, the capital goods sector is further classified as subsectors. I mean, the breakup of such sectors is visible on this slide, where the highest component is of the heavy electrical equipments. There are a lot of PSUs who do the manufacturing of such equipments, and there are a lot of private entities also. followed by the process plant equipment, earth moving equipment, which is around $3.3 billion, printing machinery also. Printing machinery, as you would be knowing, it's growing in a good pace. Then we have food processing machinery, which are helpful in production of the ready-made foods, processed foods, and so on. I hope the slides are visible. I am on the slide of subsectors of capital goods industries in India, where I'm just trying to give a breakup of uh, the types, subsectors of the capital goods industry. Right, which just to reiterate, it has subsectors of heavy electrical equipments, process plant equipment, earth moving machinery, printing machinery, food processing machinery, the machine tools, dies, molds and press, textile, plant machinery and metallurgical machinery. However, while Ministry of Commerce and Industry encourages exporters to increase, enhance the exports on a year-on-year basis, the other objective what it has been trying to achieve is in terms of trying to reduce the import dependence on the some of these sectors like the capital goods. Right, the one way of achieving it is being self-reliant in the capital goods sector, uh, uh, because uh, because capital goods is a very critical sector for all the exports and manufacturing per se. What we have observed is that we have been having a lot of trade deficit in terms of capital goods, and mostly we are deficit with respect to China. So we import a wide variety of capital goods. Wide variety, I'm sorry, a wide variety of capital goods, and the objective has been to reduce the dependencies. So both the initiatives of Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat has been to increase the capacity of all the sectors and specifically the capital goods sector, by way of increasing the share of manufacturing to 25% of the gross value added. The advantage of achieving such a higher goal is it will help in generation of additional jobs, improve the India's trade balance, and increase self-reliance. As you would be knowing, during the COVID pandemic situations, uh, having good number of ventilators was a very critical component, right? So in such a situation, some of the Indian companies were able to manufacture the quality ventilators, and some were procured from countries abroad, and so on. So to tide over such critical situations, it's always better uh, to have a good capital goods industry, which is self-reliant, so that it doesn't not just it caters to the domestic industry, it also helps in the export sector as well. Now coming to the definition of capital goods. The capital goods has been defined under 9.08 of the foreign trade policy, which reads as below. Capital goods means any plant, machinery, equipment or accessories required for manufacture or production, whether directly or indirectly for the production of goods and for production and export of goods or rendering services. So this definition is critical whenever the applications are made against the schemes of the DGFT. Right, the eligibility of the capital goods will be measured as per this particular definition of FTP. So coming back to the world trade scenario, uh, the uh, the list on the slide talks about the top exporters of capital goods. As you can see, China is way ahead of all the countries. $417 billion worth capital goods it exports, followed by Germany of $257 billion, and next with the United States of America and Japan and so on. I hope the slide of top exporters of capital goods are visible now. Okay, so this slide gives the list of countries which are the top exporters of capital goods. Just to reiterate, China being number one, followed by Germany, United States of America, Japan, Italy, Mexico, and so on. So if you see, India is lower on the list. However, there is ample scope based on the initiatives being taken by Government of India with the help of private players to come up the order in this list. Now I'm moving to the next slide. This slide talks about the recent trend in India's share in world imports versus the exports done by all other countries with respect to the capital goods. If you see, India has clocked around more than 25% of increase on an annual basis for the products of turbojets, turbopropellers, and other gas turbines, which is the which is over here. This is for the products with HS codes of 8411. Right, so this says that this particular sector has been doing well in terms of demand. However, we have other goods which are not that great in demand in terms of growth. So it gives a fair idea on how we are competing in terms how we are increasing the capacity, how we are able to address the demand of the capital goods sector. So next, I'm on this slide. Why do firms need duty exemption schemes? So the basic principle or the golden principle is that we we export goods and services and not taxes, because of which the taxes which have been incident on the raw materials and capital goods, which form major part of the cost, will have to be nullified whenever the exports have been done by using such capital goods or raw materials. So, for example, I'd like to take example of capital good which is imported from, let's say, Germany, where the capital goods is worth of 1 crore. That would be the CIF value of 1 crore. The net duty, customs duty, uh, with all other components of duties would come to around, let's say, 30%. So 30 lakhs will have to be the duty to be paid. However, if that capital good, the machinery is being used for manufacturing of products or services and exporting them, so we apply this principle of exporting goods and services and not taxes, because when uh, we have to make our exporters competitive. So this tax being paid will have to be nullified uh, on the condition that these goods have been exported. So there are different duty nullification schemes. For raw materials, it is advance authorization or the DFIA. For the capital goods, we have the export promotion capital goods scheme, that is the EPCG scheme. I'm moving on to the next slide. Before talking about the EPCG scheme, before talking about the EPCG scheme, I'd like to talk briefly about the foreign trade policy. The foreign trade policy is a once in a 5-year policy which has been notified by the DGFT under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The current policy was brought into effect on 1st April 2015 for a period of 5 years. However, it has been extended by 1 more year and it is valid till March 2021. So after April, we are expecting new foreign trade policy with various provisions under the same. The foreign trade policy caters to various aspects in terms of the basic requirements of IEC, the export promotion schemes like Chapter 3 schemes. Then we have duty nullification schemes under Chapter 4, that is advance authorization. Then we have uh, the scheme for export promotion capital goods for the capital goods part. Then we have deemed supplies, right? So it caters to a wide variety of the needs of the exporting community of India. So coming back to this export promotion capital goods scheme, the provisions of the scheme you may refer to under the Chapter 5 of Foreign Trade Policy and its Handbook of Procedures. So the Foreign Trade Policy document would be giving the policy parameters, and the Handbook of Procedures would be detailing out the the actual procedures to be followed while making applications and what are the conditions to be followed while availing the benefits under different schemes. So what is this scheme about? So uh, This scheme can be overlapped with the manufacturing and the exporting activity of any particular firm. So, for example, if a firm is into the exports of textiles, for example, the firm would require the capital goods in terms of the machines, and it would require the raw materials in terms of the fabric and so on. Then it would require the labor, right? So this, however, there are intermediate steps in the manufacturing and exporting. So it might be in the initial stage of the production, where we call it as the stage of pre-production. Then we have the actual process in the production, or it might be the post-production activities. Across all these steps, in case of any capital goods required, either for the movement of goods, either for the production of goods, either for storing and packing, any of these, the capital goods required or the machinery required can be imported under the export promotion capital goods scheme without paying duty, that is by paying zero duty custom duty. In this case, IGST and the cess is also exempted, and the scheme is also applicable for import of capital goods for project imports, which are normally notified by CBIC, that is Central Board for Indirect Taxes and Customs. So the question would be, the logical question would be, should it be available only for the imported capital goods, or can I get this benefit for even the capital goods procured through domestic procurement? Yes, it is available for the benefit is available for capital goods procured through domestic means in lieu of direct imports. Actually, that is the focus of the scheme as well, where we give additional benefits if it is procured from the domestic market. This helps in increasing the objective of Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India initiatives, and so on. So coming to the scheme, so who are the beneficiaries? What are the criteria? Let's get into this aspect. So the scheme is allowed for any manufacturer exporter who manufactures, who has a factory address, a physical factory address. He installs the capital goods and he manufacture the different products and exports. So such kind of manufacturer exporters are eligible for EPCG scheme, or for merchant exporters who do not have a factory, but they do trading, but they have tie up with the supporting manufacturer. Then the scheme is, for example, the example for merchant exporters tied to supporting manufacturer is, somebody is into the exports of ready-made garments. However, he or she does not have a particular factory. He gets it through one more factory which is existing. So he can still take the EPCG authorization with the supporting manufacturer being endorsed in the authorization, so that the capital good imported will have to be installed in the premise of the supporting manufacturer, and will be used only for the exports under this authorization, and the redemption being done. So the next set of exporters who can avail EPCG is the service providers. Service providers are the exporters who are into the service sector, who may export services under various categories like consultancy services, uh, R&D services, technical testing services, or some processing services and so on. Then we have other type of service providers who have been designated as common service provider in a particular towns of export excellence. So I'd like to explain a bit on this. DGFT regularly notifies or keeps on adding different towns in India as towns of export excellence. The concept is that the specific areas, specific towns have inherent capability for increasing the manufacturing base. However, this needs a bit of encouragement uh, to make it as an export hub. So in such cases, such towns are notified as towns of export excellence, which have specific benefits like the job workers being able to take the benefit under EPCG, the units under towns of export excellence will be able to get benefits under the MEI scheme of Department of Commerce. And so on. So these are the different types of exporters who can avail the benefits under EPCG. And next, coming to the eligibility of goods. So what kind of goods are allowed under EPCG? So not only the capital goods per se, it includes the machines, the spares, molds, fixtures, tools, computer system and software. For computer system and software that are actually part of the capital goods, such capital goods will be allowed as under the EPCG scheme. However, it's very important to know that there is a negative list of goods which are not allowed under EPCG. This would include the normal computer machines, uh, unless it's been permitted. There are then the construction material and so on. So it's not allowed. So there is a negative list which is available on the DGFT website. The exporters can go through that list. There are other set of the goods which are notified under restricted category under the import policy notified by DGFT. Such restricted goods, usually the goods are restricted wherever it is having dual nature in terms of being used for civilian as well as for military purpose and so on. So such goods are under the restricted category. The restricted goods can still be procured under EPCG only after procuring permission under the Exim Facilitation Committee uh, of the DGFT. So these goods, there is a negative list of goods which are not allowed. Then there are restricted list of goods which are allowed only after permission. Next, coming to the next slide, which talks about the conditions which the exporter will have to fulfill if he or she chooses to take an authorization under EPCG scheme. If the EPCG authorization has been taken by a common service provider, as I was talking about just now, the advantage is that uh, the common service provider will be able to provide the job work to the exporter and the common service provider will be providing such services to multiple exporters who are called users as per the definition. They are called the users of the CSP who will ultimately be exporting it against the EPCG authorizations. To cater to that, there is additional set of conditions for fulfillment of export obligation by common service provider. It is detailed out in the handbook of procedures. Uh, Specifically, it mentions about the endorsement of the EPCG authorization number, while the user of EPCG authorization files a export shipping bill. So only such shipping bills are considered for the fulfillment of export obligation under the EPCG held by the CSP or the common service provider. However, this is subject to the condition that the such used shipping bills will not be considered for export obligation fulfillment of the user per se. So one shipping bill can take the benefit of EPCG only for one IC. So that is the underlying principle. So that is the additional conditions regarding the fulfillment of export obligation by common service provider. The other conditions of the authorizations are on two folds. One is in terms of import validity, other is in terms of the export obligation period. So coming to import validity, the EPCG authorization holder can import the capital goods within 24 months of the date of issuance of the authorization. So latest within 24 months, he or she should be able to complete it. Otherwise, there is no provision of revalidating the authorization. In the other schemes of advance authorization, there is one or two revalidation allowed, but in EPCG, currently there is no provision for revalidation. However, 24 months is a good time for any exporter to get the capital goods imported, have it installed, produce and export. Right. Next, coming to the export obligation part. So the imports done under EPCG scheme shall be subject to an export obligation value or the export value up to 6 times of the duty saved on the capital goods. And this will have to be fulfilled within a period of 6 years from the date of authorization. So for example, if the capital good was the assessable value of the capital good when it landed in, for example, JNPT port Mumbai, if the value is 1 crore in INR, right? And if the net duty payable or which was paid off because of EPCG is 30%, so that is 30 lakhs. So 30 lakhs is the duty saved value. Because he is coming under EPCG scheme, he'll have to export 30 into 6 times, that is 180. 1.8 crore worth of exports he'll have to do within a period of 6 years. But the condition is that the capital goods imported will have to be used for the specific purpose of exports, and it is under the actual user condition. When we say actual user condition, and the definition of actual user also exists under chapter 9 of FTP. You may kindly go through that actually as to what are the terms and conditions of actual user. So only the manufacturer exporter or the supporting manufacturer can have the capital goods in their premises, or the service provider in case of services. Just to reiterate, the imports will have to be done within 24 months from the date of authorization. The exports will have to be fulfilled within a period of 6 years. Of course, there is a provision for extension in export obligation period, which I'll come to it a bit later. Uh, Again, it is with the actual user condition. Uh, However, the export, I would like to clarify that export obligation to be fulfilled is over and above the average level of exports achieved by the exporter in the preceding 3 years. I'd like to explain this by using an example. Let's say an exporter is trying to get an EPCG authorization in the month of August 2020. So the average export obligation will have to be fixed based on the exports done by the IC holder in the past 3 years. So that is he's applied for EPCG authorization in the year 2021, right? So the past export performance in the past 3 financial years will have to be calculated, will have to be averaged, and then that would be fixed as the average export obligation to be fulfilled under this authorization. So what does this mean? So the exporter is liable to first fulfill the average export obligation and then fulfill the specific export obligation over and above the average export obligation. So in my previous example of the duty saved value of 30 lakhs, where the specific export obligation was fixed as 1.8 crore. Suppose in his case, the previous exports in the 3 years was around 60 lakhs on an average. 50, 60 and 70. So 60 lakhs for the past 3 years. So first he'll have to fulfill the exports on those 60 lakhs per year, and then he has to fulfill the specific export obligation. However, the average export obligation can be fulfilled by uh, other exports also are done, exports done through other schemes as well. It will be counted. Whereas the specific export obligation will be counted only if the shipping bill has the endorsement of this particular EPCG authorization number. I hope the concept of the average export obligation and the regular or the specific export obligation is clear. In case of any doubts, you can send emails later after this webinar as well. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions, and we'd like to clarify in case of any doubts being posed. One other important aspect of the EPCG scheme, as I was initially mentioning also, was we encourage domestic procurement of capital goods in the export sector. And how is it being done? It's being done by way of allowing a reduction in export obligation to be fulfilled up to 25%. So 25% will be less from the applicable export obligation. If, for example, in the previous case, the export obligation fixed was 1.8 crores on account of duty saved value of 30 lakhs. So against this 1.8 into 75%, so that will be the net export obligation to be fulfilled, specific export obligation to be fulfilled in case the capital goods were procured from India. I hope that is clear. So coming to what kind of exports are eligible for export obligation fulfillment under EPCG. See, once a particular firm or an entity takes uh, EPCG authorization, he can fulfill exports by way of doing physical exports of goods or services, or he can supply the goods which are notified under the ITA 1. That's the that's the agreement on the telecommunication equipments, where the goods like mobile equipment, mobile phones, telecommunication equipments, etc. are traded. Such supplies are also eligible, and supplies which are called as the deemed exports under Chapter 7 of FTP, these are also eligible for export obligation fulfillment under EPCG. So the documents for each of them would be different. And for physical exports, it will be the shipping bill. For the services, it would be just the invoices. However, there would be against the invoices there would be realizations and foreign inward remittance certificates, which will be issued by the banker. In case of deemed exports, where the supplies are being sent from the DTA units to the deemed and the EVO units and so on, uh, such exports are also eligible under export obligation fulfillment. They have the GST invoices, which will record the transactions and so on. So the realizations against all the supplies will have to be generally in foreign currency, except in few cases where the deemed exports have been done, or the service exports which are listed under Appendix 5D. Appendix 5D, which has been notified by the DGFT, lists certain set of services which are of deemed export in nature in terms of the services being provided at the port, the maritime transport services. For example, berthage services at the port, or the services for refueling over or providing reefer containers and so on. So such services can be realized in the form of rupees and still be counted as export obligation fulfilled under EPCG. Next, coming to the calculation as to how the export obligation fulfillment is calculated. So, for example, if an exporter has taken an authorization of, let's say, duty saved value of 1 crore, however, he had not utilized the authorization to import goods with capital the duty saved value of 1 crore, he did it only for 50%. Let's say he imported capital goods of duty saved value of 50 lakhs. Then he would be required to fulfill only to that extent. So uh, instead of 6 crores worth of exports, he will be required to fulfill the export obligation by exporting only 3 crores, because 50 lakhs was the total duty saved value into 6 times. So that is 3 crores. So the calculation is based on the actual duty saved done through the authorization. In certain specific cases, in order to provide uh, encouragement to certain sectors, specific reduction in export obligations has been allowed. For example, in case of exporters who are exporting uh, green technology products, which are already notified by DGFT, right? So in such cases, the specific export obligation required to be fulfilled is only 75% of the applicable export obligation. That is one subcategory. There is a different category where the units which are located in the Northeast India and Jammu and Kashmir would be required to fulfill only 75% of the applicable export obligation. And there is a special concession also for the exporters who have exemplary exports in their record to incentivize early exports. Uh, the provision has been made under FTP where the authorization holder has completed 100% of the average export obligation till date, and on top of it, if he has fulfilled more than 75% of the exports within the original EO period. So if the authorization was issued for 6 years, half the period would be 3 years. So if the exporter fulfills even 75% of export, specific export obligation within the first 3 years, the authorizations can be closed or be redeemed by way of issuing export obligation discharge certificate on account of this particular um, provision under 5.09 of FTP. So these are all the benefits which have been given to certain sectors or certain regions in order to increase the industrial base or the capacity of the particular sector in terms of green technology, to promote green technology exports, to promote more use of such products, and broadly to make Indian exports competitive in the upcoming sectors like green technology. Coming to the next slide. So we have talked about the export obligation under EPCG. So how exactly it is to be completed? I mentioned about 6 times the export obligation, the duty said value will have to be fulfilled. Now, is it in any particular year? Can it be done in only 1 year completely, or can it be done at the last year? So that is the question. So there are specific provisions, and we call it the export obligation fulfillment in blocks. So the export obligation period of 6 years under the current EPCG scheme is divided to 2 blocks. First block is of 4 years, second block is of 2 years. So I mean, to give exporters a bit of a room for initial longer period, the 50% of the exports will need to be completed in the first 4 years, right? And the remaining 50% will have to be done in the subsequent block, that is the second block, with a period of 2 years. So what will happen is if he doesn't fulfill the 50% of exports in the first block, he can do two things. One, he can get an extension of the block for 2 more years by paying composition fee of 2% on duty saved amount on the unfulfilled proportion of the export obligation, or by regularizing that part by paying a custom duty with interest. right? So I'd like to also state that for making all such kind of applications, it is required that the exporters make applications online. In this year, I mean starting December 2020, the new online application modules have been launched by DGFT, where all these provisions can be easily applied through the online forms, and in a very quick manner the DGFT officers will be able to process and issue the authorizations and permissions based on the applications. To also mention that the fees we can be paid uh, through various modes of payment, and it is a very seamless application. That's what we have been able to implement. So coming back to this, um, so we have two things. One is the block-wise export obligation fulfillment. Other is the the total export obligation period. The total export obligation period, which is the 6-year period, can be extended further for 2 years by paying composition fee as per the procedures. So for first year, a composition fee of 5% of the proportionate duty saved amount on the unfulfilled export obligation in the first year of the extension will have to be paid, and for the second year it is 10% of the proportionate duty saved amount on the unfulfilled export obligations will have to be paid. By paying the composition fees, the export obligation period will be extended by 1 year or 2 years. However, you have to bear in mind that the request for extension in EO period will have to be made within 90 days of, from the date of expiry of the export obligation period. However, in even with an additional compensation fee of 5,000, you can still choose to apply after the expiry of 90 days from the original period. You can apply up to 180 days with the payment of 5,000 rupees. So what will happen? There might be a logical question asking, what if a particular product which I'm exporting gets banned for exports? So, like for example, uh, some machines were endorsed as authorization, endorsed on the authorization for exports in a particular year, or for let's say for 2 years, that exports have been banned. In such cases, the policy provides for automatic EO export obligation period extension in cases where ban on export products have occurred. So if the ban was for 2 years, correspondingly the export obligation period would be extended by 2 more years. So that once the ban has been revoked, you can still continue and do the export obligation fulfillment. So that is the logic. However, instead of ban, if it was a very bad economic situation where the entire sector, not just the product, the entire sector product group has declined in terms of the exports by more than 5% compared to the previous year. Even in such cases, there is a relaxation in the average export obligation and it will be notified by the DGFT. So once having imported the capital goods, having it installed, and having done the exports, what is the next step? The next step is to get the cases, EPCG authorization cases closed, or to get the export obligation discharge certificate. This can be applied through the online application, and in the application based on the EPCG authorization number, the system will automatically pick up the shipping bills and the EBRCs, e-bank realization certificates linked to such e-shipping bills, and show the summary of the export obligation fulfillment. In case of any discrepancy, that you can apply and make a justification on the letter and upload the same, and the regional authority of DGFT would consider the application and take necessary action. Till recently, the process of redemption of EPCG authorizations was not online. Since December 2020, it has been made online. It's been all the exporters are encouraged to make use of the online process to reduce. This will help in reducing the burden of having to submit the physical copies of the shipping bill, BRC, EBRC, invoices, and so on. Because it is an EDI shipping bill. I mean, these are applicable in EDI shipping bills, where the customs authorities send those shipping bills and the bill of entry against these authorizations uh, to DGFT, and these are stored in the server. So these are automatically calculated, and the any shortfall in export obligation is being displayed in the application itself. And once you're satisfied with the assessment, you can regularize the case by paying the applicable duty with interest on the unfulfilled export obligation. Another provision of the export promotion capital goods scheme is that you can have an option of clubbing few authorizations and closing in one go, in the sense that you have imported capital goods under multiple authorizations. However, you have had exports done in one authorization. So such authorizations can be clubbed and the total duty rate value will be fixed. And if that corresponds to I mean the exported goods uh, in any of the authorization, if it is more than, if it is sufficient to cover the duty rate value across multiple authorizations, so such applications can be clubbed and closed. There is another variation of the export promotion capital goods scheme where it is called as post-export EPCG. This is in cases where the exporters do not want to take the export obligation initially. They would want to wait to do the exports and then claim the credit for having exported by way of getting the post-export EPCG script. So how does this work? They initially apply for the post-export EPCG authorization that is issued, that they have it registered at the customs. When the goods come in, the duty is paid. It's not waived off in such cases. Here the duty is paid. They clear the goods, get the goods installed in the factory, start doing export obligation. However, in such post-export EPCG authorization, the export obligation to be fulfilled is only 85% of the normal EPCG authorization. So once he fulfills that EPCG 85% of the export obligation, he applies for redemption, and after the calculation and the export obligation fulfillment being approved by the DGFT office, he or she will be able to get a duty credit scrip proportionate to the export obligation fulfilled. This duty credit scrip will be based on the actual basic customs duty paid by the exporter. So this is another variant of post-export EPCGs, which is being used by quite a few exporters. So now these were the basic provisions under the policy and handbook of procedures. Now let us try to understand as to what exactly is happening on the ground. So based on the data of 2019, if I have to mention, these are the different types of capital goods or the spares or the tools which have been imported under authorization, which have been allowed to be imported under the EPCG authorization. So for example, as you would be knowing, the goods are classified as per the ITCHS codes, right? Harmonized codes of the products. So here I am demonstrating the import value which has been allowed under EPCG with the 2-digit level of products. So under chapter 84 of ITCHS policy, and there are machineries, boilers, or mechanical appliances or their parts. So that is the highest as a group. Then we have floating structures. Then we have the photographic and cinematographic equipments. Then we have electrical machinery. Then we have tools, implements, and so on. These are the spare parts. Then we have ceramic products, chemical products, and so on. You would also see about furniture, bedding, mattress, and so on. These are the capital goods which are considered as valid capital goods for the hospitality sector or the hospital sector, because of which it is getting shown over here. Okay, so what are the advantages of the scheme? As I told you, EPCG is one of the capital goods promotion scheme, and EPCG scheme promotes the capital goods scheme specifically for the export sector, and it tries to achieve the use of latest technology for exports of goods or services, thereby uh, uh, trying to increase the competitiveness of Indian exports across the world by using the latest technology. I mean, that's a common understanding that whenever we are upgrading our technology, we keep on increasing the competitiveness, the productivity, and the efficiency with zero defect in terms of the product delivery. And this would help in increasing our exports, reducing the cost, and increasing the capacity. So by when we increase our capacity, we not only cater to the import demands across various countries, we also help in reducing the dependency on the imports. And whenever the technology is re-engineered and being developed in India, the next set of the exporters can really bank on the capital goods which have been manufactured in India. So that is the idea about Make in India and the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So this helps in reducing the import dependency uh, for capital goods. So this scheme helps towards that. Um, we have, I mean, just like I mentioned, we have a high import dependence for capital goods from the countries of China, Vietnam, Germany, USA. So we have to reduce it. By reducing it, the import bill will reduce, the trade balance will be in favor of India. We'll be able to export more capital goods. We'll be a leader of the export goods, and we'll be able to sustain all the sectors, all the other industries because of the inherent nature of competitive capital goods sector. Further, this scheme has helped in providing huge opportunities for skilled employment. If you would appreciate these capital goods, the handling of the capital goods, the installation of the capital goods, the operational of the capital goods, and the maintenance, all these required a bit of training or the skilled labor or the skilled employment. So yeah, this will help Indian industry move from moving towards skill-based exports, and it will be able to absorb a lot of uh, employment opportunities, and further it will help in earning higher foreign exchange reserves. Thereby, we will be able to achieve the objective of the government of India, which is to export US dollars worth of 1 trillion per year. This is all I had from my side regarding how do we go about leveraging the export promotion capital goods scheme to increase the exports. Just to recap, uh, we uh, we try to establish the context in which we are organizing this webinar, wherein the topic is about increasing the exports by way of using EPCG scheme. And EPCG scheme, we have established the importance of the capital goods sector for Indian domestic industry and for the Indian export industry. Uh, and then we moved on to uh, the trade scenario, the world trade scenario in the capital goods. We saw a list of the exporting countries which export the capital goods, starting from China, Germany, USA, Japan, and so on. India needs to improve on that aspect. For that, we have to absorb the technology, we have to re-engineer, we have to develop, we have to use in our exports, and fulfill this cycle of increasing the capacity. And then we moved on to the foreign trade policy and the duty nullification schemes, specifically the export promotion capital goods scheme, the procedures of those scheme, the benefits of those scheme, and the finally the advantages of all these schemes, trying to uh, trying to achieve the objective of uh, our honorable Prime Minister, right? So this was it. I Kavleen, do we have any questions as of now?
So not yet, but they all the participants are requested. If they have any, they can mail us. We'll forward the same.
Okay, okay, fine, fine. Okay. In this case, actually, I think we can wind up the session. I thank all the participants who have joined in today on the Saturday evening. We look forward for your queries on the topic. We'll be clarifying on the issues what we discussed and any further issues under the foreign trade policy. And I'd like to thank IFT, Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, for having me invited to this webinar. I hope this has been an informative session, at least for the basic aspects. Uh, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir.